Well. So today we are um, beginning our second session on cases presentations. We're gonna discuss today the global supply chain managed by Nike. So we're gonna shed light on the challenges that the garment industry uh, faces related to managing the supply chain. We're gonna the group probably will present the issues related to compliance, to labor issues that suppliers face, and then fit the image of the leading company. So this is going to be the topic of today. So guys, I will handle the stage for you. Feel welcome.
Thank you, Professor. May I share my screen?
Pode sim. Oh, sorry, you can.
Professor, I just wanted to let you know beforehand that one of the participants in our group isn't going to be able to speak today because of a religious, I forgot the name, a holiday, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to present in his place, okay?
No problem. He talked to me last week. It is fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about Nike. Our group is composed by Bruno, Cristiano, Juliana, Luisa, Maria, Mateus, Rafael, and me, Victor. Sorry. So we have divided a table of contents with 4 parts. The first one is in the introduction. We are going to explain about Nike's history. The second one is the changes in Nike's supply chain management. The third one is global sourcing at Nike. And the fourth is looking ahead, that we're going to expose our insight from this presentation. Okay, so Nike was founded on January 26, 1964 as Blue Ribbon Sports. Nike became officially Nike only in 1971. From 1971 to the early 80s, Nike was mostly a shoe track company. Then in 85, they released the Air Jordans. The Air Jordans was the first step towards the Nike we recognize today. In 86, in the release year, they were expecting to sell 3 million worth of sneakers. They ended up selling 126 million. This tells us something important about Nike marketing strategy, that is advertising high-profile athletes, that Nike could create an image that people wanted to be a part of. And in a brand, that is something you can only hope for. Later on, Nike opened its first retail store in 1990 in Portland, Oregon.
In the 90s, Nike outsourced their production to the East Asia, especially Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And with that, they faced a lot of problems, criticism. First, because Nike always said they were an American brand, and they were producing their products in different countries, and that was the first critic they got. And then I don't know who exactly, but they discovered about the bad working conditions in a factory in Asia that Nike used to buy their products from. So they face a lot of criticism about working conditions, underpaid workers, human rights abuse. And in the early 2000s, they established a corporate responsibility and compliance division to assure standards of quality and their code of conduct in the factories. Um, and that was the way they found to keep their production in Asia, where it's very low cost and could assure the quality and human rights standards.
So considering all these labor conditions, Nike made some changes in their supply chain management. Starting in 2008, Vitor, pode passar, por favor. Starting in 2008 with the creation of a new index. So Nike founds a country in Middle West with a potentially attractive way to access an expensive and high quality cotton. Otherwise, the countries had poor track record on political stability, treatment of women, and corruption. So their managements were in a trade-off situations to bet in high labor compliance risk versus invest in increasing capable suppliers and production. So to solve this problem, they created an index called Country Risk Index. This index considers 8 categories of risk. There are labor, environmental, individual safety, cargo, property, business, economy, and corruption. And to rate this index, they made a rate from 1 that are called very low risk to 10, very high risk. And then they also developed a new project in 2009 because they began to consider the supply chain more holistic with a long-term view of the business performance. So they try to identify the upstream factors that influence the factory compliance in taking a long-term view of the business performance. So part of this long-term view, called it in the 2009, they were used to collect some data and make just only financial cases based on tangible assets. But as Jones, there were a vice president of responsibility in Nike, I am not sure, but I think so. He said that we knew excessive overtime affected a factory's product quality, work turnover, and productivity. So what we need to do to fight with this? So they created a project we hired. Their goal was to create a profitable supplying, specialized not just in financial metrics, but also in social and environmental metrics. So their criteria was not just cost, quality, and delivery speed, but also code of conduct. And to make this really happen, they make some checks and balance that included dotted line reporting and the creation of separate functions designed to audit the auditors.
Okay, so moving on into the changes performed by Nike to assure better compliance into the supply chain. In 2012, they created a manufacturing index, which was an index that was responsible to quantify and evaluate their suppliers. So the manufacturing index was a sourcing tool that has the goal of rating Nike suppliers on their performance in 4 areas: cost, quality, delivery, and sustainability. So this was another step into assuring that Nike's holistic strategy was being implemented. They all rated every supplier they had from a scale from 0 to 100 along those 4 topics. And for for each of the criteria, the suppliers would be rated in a specific color according to their performance. So using the sustainability example, bronze would be the according would mean that the supplier meets the Nike's compliance requirements. Silver would be a little a step further into that, where the supplier makes consistent improvements that goes beyond what Nike's asks from them. And gold standard would be the supplier attends into world-class requirements regarding all of those topics. So with that in view, Nike was able to rank their suppliers in a way that they would give preference to higher rated suppliers when making orders. Next one. Okay, the next change that Nike did was the whole reorganization of the governance regarding sourcing and manufacturing. So they created a new role, which was Global Sourcing and Manufacturing VP, which had the main objective of overseeing the entire source base from Nike's production. Earlier on, we spoke about the writing the code of conduct, and the person assigned to the VP role was Amanda Tucker, which was one of the responsible people to developing the code of conduct and the protocols. So, and later on, she served as general manager of footwear in Vietnam. So it was very important to bring her along for this role because she had the view of the two sides of the business, the compliance side and also the production and the product side. So she was the key person to the job, let's say like that. So her department was responsible for assuring that they had enough contracted capacities to satisfy the production needs. And also she was responsible to decide where the orders would take place and from which suppliers. She also brought along two other VPs, which were the apparel manufacturing and sourcing VP and the footwear manufacturing and sourcing VP. In a system in which Amanda would suggest which orders she would like to make, and these other VPs would confirm it according to her choice. It was very important to create separate strategies for each one of the departments because the entire supply chain and the entire way the chain was distributed couldn't stand for a single strategy on all products. So finding different sourcing strategies for each segment was key for her success in this new role.
Okay, moving on to part 3. Nike established 3 key supply chain challenges that were looking for suppliers that meet compliance standards, investing financially and mentally on the improvement of suppliers' capabilities, and being responsive to consumer demand across the board.
About the global sourcing and the supplier compliance first. So when they started with this supplier compliance thing, they started like to take into account many factors for selection and sourcing, including sustainability, distance to market, and duties to compete on innovations, service, and consumer experience. For this, they made like audits, yeah, and these audits they average 3 steps in day, and they cost approximately $5,000. And Nike audit protocol includes 3,000 questions, and each results informed the factors sustainable or scores and the manufacturing index that Juliana mentioned before. And half of the Nike factors met compliance standard, scoring in bronze or higher. Pode passar. Now the sections was a part of this compliance, which they try like to control more the manufacturers. So if the factory failed to fix several problems, or if they show like same violations, Nike would impose these sections. Nike intends that the section was not to be like punitive. They rather would like to reduce the factory's produce level to allow the focus on remediation. And Nike is like trying to do the best of asking for demand, but they don't want the factories to change to don't follow the sections, you know, but they want to increase the production. Pode passar the sections. Okay, the footwear factor. During a period of growth in demand, and they have like limited capacity to address the product, the demand increased like approximately 12% compared to the previous year, and jumped over again for 10%. But in this year, like Nike was having like issues with the food factor, and when they want to reduce the capability, they like meet the demand, so which was like a shock for them. And when the products started to be delayed because they were not like following the demand, the people started to cancel the products like from Nike, and they estimate that this canceling the order resulted in millions of dollars in loss of profitability in margin gross. We can pass now. And the other is that in April, a factory audit revealed that a supplier of highly specialized products violated the labor of immigrant laws. So the factory, which employed like 100 people, was part of long-term strategy of the supplier group, and then Nike, like they want to build this long-term relationship. So this was one of the factors that was with them like for a long time, and they have planned to increase, but then it happened, and this company failed in the audit that was Rita mentioned. And they tried to show that demand was growing fast as a rate in 10%. And despite the situation, you know, they still didn't keep the contract with the manufacturer, but it was like hard to find out a solution because they lost a lot of money in this case.
So Eric Sprung, the CEO of Nike, said once that if the worker comes to work every day feeling valued, they're going to do their best job. So Nike started to believe that by enhancing supplier production and management capabilities, it would improve the working conditions for the workers and for the suppliers, which would lead to a sustainability performance. So while initially the brand was heavily involved in training suppliers, they started to see an importance in making the factories themselves take ownership of their training and invest in their own capabilities and in their own self. So instead of Nike investing in the suppliers, they started shifting their goal for the suppliers to invest in themselves. So in order to build the supplier capability, they set on some goals. One of the first things that they put in mind at first was the lean production, which was originally invented by Toyota, which is basically a method that focuses on eliminating waste and empowering workers while reducing inventory and improving productivity. So it's pretty much a way to make the whole process of production more sustainable. So in the Lean 1.0, which is when right when Nike started in 2002, they were focusing on making the manufacturing processes in an effort to deliver speed and productivity. On the apparel side, they started offering training in lean manufacturing, starting in 2005. And in 2009, they opened a center for innovation called the Apparel Innovation Training Center inside a factory in Sri Lanka, in which suppliers around Asia were invited to participate in a 12-week program in lean manufacturing. However, it's important to point out that the suppliers were the ones responsible for the costs. So some of the suppliers didn't necessarily went to this program. But however, the ones that did implement this method made factories way more compliant with Nike codes of conduct, and the violations of labor standards fell from 40% to 25%. So it was a huge increase and a huge win for Nike. In towards the end of 2014 and beginning of 2015, Nike launched the Lean 2.0. Which was created by adding to the course work engagement and leadership and management. So this second part focused more on the worker themselves. And as a result, factories' productivity increased by 19%, quality levels increased by 7%, and morale increased by 22%, which is seen by the CEO of Nike as a very important thing. When suppliers and workers are happy, though everything flows better. So after conducting pilots in 16 factories and drawing together the best practices on safety, the methodology and results were put in practice into manuals and were made available to all suppliers. And the suppliers could also participate in another 12-week program if they wanted, but they also had to pay for the costs. Furthermore, they started focusing as well on scaling. So they supported the capability of building opportunities in areas such as modernization. The supplier who improved efficiency or productivity with technology had many financial benefits, and this was a very significant incentive to low margin because the apparel manufacturing is somewhat of a low margin area. So it enabled the suppliers to increase their margin of income. And suppliers with advanced capabilities were given more access to better purchase orders and more innovative products. So basically the suppliers who were able to adhere to these new technologies, they also had benefits given by Nike. And the obstacle is that not all the suppliers were able of implementing the new technologies and this digital solutions, because some of them couldn't afford or had some other issues. And Nike had to develop a team of staff that was capable of engaging with suppliers and service providers in a more strategic level, so they could understand the benefits of bringing these new implementations. And Nike also advocated for factory managers to engage in sustainability programs, which is also very trendy for the next years and is very important for the world. Unfortunately, not all suppliers shared Nike's view on paying for the capabilities for improving their technology and sustainable practices. And some of them didn't see many benefits in investing in worker engagement conditions. But those who did really had many benefits. So coming to geographic diversity. Consumer direct offense strategy was a strategy also developed, and its main goal was to better serve the customer personally, but at scale. So at the same time that the company is interested in serving each customer with their personal needs, it does this at scale. So it wants to do this for the whole world. In 2018, the goal was to increase geographic diversity just in order to improve the customer experience. Before that practice, Nike had a very difficult situation at hand. They weren't able to predict, to make a very good forecasts for what people would want, for what products would be the best products. So it ended up making Nike stores and retailers having excessive inventories. They would buy many of what they believed would sell, and not necessarily they would sell all of those products, which ended up that stores would end up making discounts to sell these extra products so that they wouldn't be at loss, which was a very bad thing for Nike because it threatened the premium image of the company, because the company has an image of being of having very good quality products, and therefore because of this they are able to charge a higher price. But because of that, they had to make many discounts, which lower the product price, which also made the brand image a little bit different. And it even created another problem, which was that many people started to, instead of buying products as soon as they were launched, they would wait for the products to come at a discount price. So this really was becoming a huge problem for Nike, and they saw a huge opportunity for them to fix this problem, which was basically for consumer behavior to be used as a demand signal rather than retailers' orders. So instead of just making every store say what they want to buy, they would listen to what the customers would want. And in order to do that and to be able to provide the products that are wanted, it needs to the production capacity needs to be closer to the consumer markets. For example, factories in Asia, the products take about 45 days to reach the United States. So if a product suddenly has a huge need for a huge demand for a certain product, this demand would not be met in time, and Nike would lose many sales due to that. So Nike started seeing a great opportunity in operating in Central America and in the Caribbean, and this idea came from a supplier of Nike's that started encouraging Nike to produce in these areas in order to reduce lead time for the US market. But it's important to point out that Nike had some concerns, because in Asia they already have their suppliers for a long time, and they already are secure that they already are sure that their suppliers have the standards that they want. So they were worried about the risks, the capability, capacity, and prices and labor compliances for these areas, which will be discussed more in depth. So they started calling on experience. They started remembering a situation that they had in Bangladesh. Competition was arriving very strongly in this place, and for other brands that were competitors of Nike were having their suppliers locate to this place, and since they are the second largest clothing exporter, they really had a lot of competition in that area. Especially because there are very many benefits of producing there, some of which it is one of the lowest minimum wages in the world. So it's very cheap to produce there. However, Nike's country risk index ranked Bangladesh among the highest countries, the riskiest countries, because they have a lot of corruption and bad labor conditions. Some scandals in the past years led Nike to rethink their presence in the area. There was a huge fire in a factory that was not occupied by any of Nike's suppliers. However, because they have a huge center there, people started having a very bad image of Nike. So they decided that they would either need to expand their presence there in order to really take advantage of the situation, of the benefits of being there, or they would reduce their presence. In 2012, they decided to make a visit to inspect the factories in Bangladesh. And when they saw the conditions, they realized that it wasn't safe to stay there. It wasn't worth the risk. So they decided to reduce its source base and only source from EPZ factories, which is the area where they have the export production zone. So it's basically an area where there are factories that are specialized in exporting. So that's what they decided to do. Then they decided to visit the Caribbean and see the opportunities there. And there were many advantages in setting factories on the Caribbean. One of the most important being that they would have access to otherwise idle labor because there are huge unemployments in the area. It would actually be very positive for the country in which they would choose in the Caribbean, for them to be there, because it would employ many people. Another very key high point is the proximity to the US market, which is one of the reasons why the Nike started looking elsewhere for production. And they also have very low wages, just as in Asia. And there are tariff reliefs because the United States government has many agreements between themselves and countries in the Caribbean. However, there were very significant disadvantages, which were that mainly that they scored very high on the country risk index for corruption and environmental concerns. And they were also worried about the infrastructure and security aspects. Nike could alternatively source more from Central America, which would also resolve the concern of being close to the US. But the country risk index also had many of the same issues. So it would be pretty much the same thing. So still, Asian countries are favorable in terms of freight on board, cost, manufacturing index scores, and country risk. So basically, the only very significant reason to go to the Caribbean and Central America would be to bring work to the population, and also to decrease the lead time to take the products to the United States. So now I have put some of the data so you can see. So really all the places that Nike has factories, there are a lot of corruption, and it's pretty much, I see it as very similar from one to the other. There are some differences, and in general, Asia really scores higher, and the Caribbean scores the lowest. The FOB cost is really low for Asian countries, but the lead time is really low for Caribbean countries. So it's really a matter of what is a priority for Nike right now, and also knowing how to balance out because while there are some benefits in one area of the world, there are some benefits in another area.
And looking ahead, despite the domination in the US market, there are other markets that can be better explored, such as Brazil and Russia. As athletes in general are the enterprise core business, they should keep the attention to the up and coming athletes because the competition in this market starts in earlier ages, and obviously maintain the investment in technology.
All right, guys. Thank you for the presentation. It was good. Actually, this case is very interesting, as you folks explained it, because I mean we put together procurement strategies, supply chain management, global supply chain management, and one issue that is fully present in all over the businesses, which is sustainability and mostly compliance, right? It's interesting to notice that demand client king, right? Client is king. Of course, the new generations, as soon we get younger managers getting into the factories. I mean, people from my age have already a good or very good notion on the importance of sustainability and compliance. People older than me eventually are not that linked because the generation is other, and of course you guys that will be the new generation of managers and directors of the companies, Brazil and worldwide, will have or will be driven by those values. So this is there is no way back. There is no way back. And this case shows how this industry is driven by customers' requests, right? So Nike needs to change all its supply chain to implement a very strict compliance program in order, at the end of the day, again, to meet customers' needs and requirements. So this is very interesting. I invite you guys to imagine, although all the benefits, the fight that internally Nike eventually faces, because I mean, procurement wants to procure, to buy cheap and fast with small lead time in good conditions, etc. And then Nike implemented so strong compliance program in which, at the end of the day, procurement decisions was not exclusively in the hands of procurement director, head of procurement. It was divided, split between procurement director, procurement area, and the risk area. So I imagine, the fight in a good sense. I mean, the discussions that they have internally, each team defending their point of view, right? Bangladesh maybe is one of the, Maria Luisa well described it, was one of the most interesting cases, because I mean, it's an important exporter country with tradition in garment, and well, they slow down the procurement from there because of issues, compliance issues. Interesting, nice, we need to, it's hard to us to request, this type of behavior from smaller companies. This needs to be, or this needs to come from the customer. Customer needs to demand from the firms, no matter if they are large or small, or local or global, they need to request such type of value, and they need to pay for that. This is important to put this point. Nike does all of these because they are well paid for the products that they have. The same thing as Apple, the same thing as other global brands. When we see, for example, I presented to you in the topic, if I'm not wrong, strategic procurement, just in the beginning of the course, I showed you the requirement that the retailing sector in Europe made or make to buy agricultural products from Latin America and Asia. We have Global Gap, we have TESCO certification, which is pretty much similar to the programs that Nike implemented to the supplier. They rate the suppliers according to several criteria, among them, of course, cost, productivity, but sustainability, labor conditions, corruption, etc. We have the same thing. Why? Because TESCO, because all the retailers in Europe, they are the demand that they have from the end customers are that the customers, they request, they want to make sure that they are eating a fresh grape, or they are drinking a orange juice that came from Brazil, but that came in good conditions, that respected the environment, that respected the society, the local society, that respected the worker, the labor conditions, and so on. So demand is the king. Demand is the king. Another interesting point, also, not, if I'm not wrong, it was Maria Luisa that mentioned, was related to the integration between Nike and the suppliers in order to exchange experience and to make the suppliers better. The effort that Nike made to get together with the suppliers in order to implement those values in suppliers' mind. We see something pretty similar, more focused on productivity and cost, but we see this proximity, this type of approach also in the case of that group number 4 we discussed on Toyota. Toyota make this close approach to the suppliers in order to transmit knowledge and in order to hear from the suppliers their issues, their problems, their pains. And another case that brings a similar approach is the case that's not going to be approached in this course, but is one case that discusses Danone's strategy all over the supply chain, and they have a similar approach as Nike. They have a group to discuss with the suppliers innovative ideas, innovation, cost reduction, and they exchange experiences. And of course, they implement also sustainability and respect values. They transmit those values to the suppliers. Okay. Well, folks, I guess, let me see if I took note of something else that I would like to. Another topic that I would like to just to make a quick approach. Mateus brought one thing that was very clear in the material, that Nike outsources, or started to outsource everything in Asia, right? So Asia is a birth of outsourcing for all the industries. This is impressive, right? This is impressive because Asia has plenty of workforce in number. They have, I would say, well-trained workforce in general, reasonable level of education depending on the country. They have a cheap workforce, and they kind of, given the experience that they have in producing everything from the companies in the western part of the world, given the experience that they accumulated over the years, they understood how to work with the Western world. They understood those values. They know that a global firm from North America, for example, they can just suspend buying or, I mean, dealing with a supplier if there is compliance and sustainable issues. So they learned that. And this was the challenge when Nike went to Caribbean, right? Because in Caribbean, they in Central America in general, they didn't have this same training, preparation, experience. Okay, Asia is fantastic. We are seeing in this pandemic, right? Everything comes from there. I mean, since IFA to iPhone, it's just impressive, you know. The only thing that doesn't come from Asia is food, natural food. I mean, raw material, grains, sugar, etc. These things they buy, and I mean, this is the advantage of South America, and special Americas in general, and South America in special. United States have several very plural economy. They can export everything. They have a huge internal market. But for us, knowing that Eastern doesn't produce food is a important topic for us, because we are as South Americans food suppliers. Okay, and raw material suppliers actually in general, ore and other commodities, not only agricultural commodities. All right. Any comments, guys? Any additional comments from the group or from the class? Any doubt?
Professor, there was some that I missed it to be mentioned in this case. There was the ESG practice, looking out to this compliance and I don't know strategy. I missed this. I know that my Nike is already doing, but I missed it to be mentioned in this case.
Okay, thank you, Juliana, for the addition. And just one final topic before moving forward, guys. Compliance, actually, as I said, comes. The compliance strategy in the firms, in supply chains, they come from customer requests. I mean, the customers, they request this type of procedures from the firms, from the supply chains. And I mean, this behavior that comes from the customer actually comes from the high level of education, right? As soon as we have a highly educated society that have a open-minded approach, thinking on the several aspects related to consumption, not only to the purchase per se, but I mean, how that product was produced, what the resources that was implemented or deployed in that product. This is a matter of societal, of education of the society. I mean, the higher is the level of education, the higher is the requests for compliance features. And of course, the higher is the education, the higher is the income of the population. So the higher they can pay for the goods with those intangible values. And sometimes it is hard, I mean, to discuss this. I mean, imagine taking again as an example the agricultural products. We see Europe hitting Brazil on Amazon forest, right? And I mean, for them, for Europe, for European, it's so clear that production cannot harm the tropical forest. And for Brazil, sometimes it's not that hard, not that easy to understand this topic. I mean, we see several things beyond this interest. I mean, I'm not saying that Europeans are innocent and Brazilians are the bad guys and the other way around. I'm just saying that there is a matter of education that comes from the societies. I mean, I believe that Europeans, they think and they want to buy things that comes from sustainable production, just to take this example. On the other hand, it's not clear yet, and this is important for the development of the society that is in the supply part. It's not clear how Europe or how the developed world want to pay for that. I mean, we need to have a value addition in order to distribute this value all over the communities that live, for example, in Amazon, right? The topic is, okay, we're going to preserve the Amazon, but we have a bunch of people, I don't know, 20 million people living within the forest. How those guys will live? What's gonna be the market contribution for those guys? We need to value the services and products that they can sell, provided from sustainable activities. So it's a important issue, a very important issue that shall be addressed and have relation with somehow with the case that you folks presented. All right. Okay, let me make the presence check here quickly. And yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
I was just asking if you prefer for us to upload in PDF or PowerPoint the presentation from today.
Well, I would prefer to the PowerPoint because I can see in the presentation mode. If you can, it would be better. But if you want to send in PDF, I can handle here, but preferably in PowerPoint. Well, guys, so the Dropbox is open for case 2. I will open as soon as we finish this class, in order for me to not forget. I will open the Dropbox for case 3 that will be presented next Tuesday. I'll leave this already open, and that's it. I guess just the check and we're free. André Frangipani. Oh. Arthur. Bruna Dantas. Bruno Caquinelli is there. Bruno Cunha is there. Okay. Camila Freitas.
I'm here.
Okay. Carolina.
Here, Professor.
Okay.
Here?
Okay, Carolina. Okay. Cristiano is there. Diego.
Hello, teacher.
Okay, Diego. Fernando Tomé. Fernando.
Hey, Professor.
Okay, Fernando. Gabriel is there. Okay. Gustavo Castilho. Gustavo. Hector.
Here, Professor.
Hey, Hector. Isabela Correia.
Hello.
Hey, Isabela. Jenny. Juliana, okay. Lucas Dichan.
Hey, Professor.
Hey, Lucas. Lucas Botino.
Here, Professor.
Okay. Maria, okay. Maria de Carvalho, okay. Maria Eugênia.
Here.
Okay. Maria Luísa, okay. Marina.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay. Mário.
Hey, Professor.
Hey, Mário.
How are you?
Matheus Alencastro. Matheus Alencastro Mendes Barros. Não. Matheus Guedes, okay. Rafael was justified. Renan.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, Renan. Roberto.
Here, Professor.
Victor Manuel. Victor.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, Victor. And William. William? Nope.
Daniel, I think I missed mine.
No, I gave you presents.
Okay.
No problem. Relax.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, folks. So that's what we had for today. I see you next Tuesday with case number 3. If I'm not wrong, is Nutella's case, the Ferreiro Group case. Very nice one. I like that one a lot. Okay, so have a good week and take care, and see you soon. Ciao.
Daniel, do you have a few minutes?
Bye, Professor.
Thank you, Professor. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys. Thank you, Mario. I have.
I can go after Mario. Sorry.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Roberto, pode ir primeiro, que é um pouco uma questão um pouco delicada aí. Eu prefiro
Não,
falar
tranquilo.
só aí ele.
É,
de
pior que o
outra
meu também é.
pessoa. Ei,
Mas, não, mas se você quiser, tipo, eu não vou nem ouvir aqui, eu vou, só espero quando você acabar, pode ser?
Tá, pode ser.
Se vocês quiserem também, a gente pode marcar com um horário específico, caso seja muito delicado, vocês não queiram falar aqui, sem problema.
Acho que eu posso falar rapidinho, então? Tipo, acho que é rápido.
Eu tiro aqui, pode deixar.
Não, mas pode ouvir, relaxa, tipo, eu acho que o meu nem é tão delicado assim, vou falar rapidinho. Professor, rapidinho, eu tô na empresa da família lá, a gente tá contratando lá coordenador de compras, né? Mas assim, com experiência internacional, porque a gente tem insumos do mundo inteiro, né, tal. Mas de qualquer forma, eu queria perguntar se você tinha algum contato, alguma indicação. Na verdade, assim, desculpa a enrolação, é que o processo já está no final. Tipo, eu acho que vão bater o martelo, tipo, hoje, se eu não me engano. Eu não acompanhei ao longo do tempo, mas eu lembrei, tipo, ontem, assim, pô, talvez o professor Daniel ele poderia me dar uma indicação, sei lá, alguma coisa assim, algum contato, né?
Tá.
Talvez não para esse momento, mas para o futuro, entendeu? Algum cara que, tipo, tenha experiência. Eu tenho a intenção de sempre trazer alguma coisa da GV para a empresa, tipo, seja uma pessoa que é formada na GV, que é professor da GV, que tem mestrado, alguma coisa assim, porque eu acho que vale a pena na empresa profissionalizar e tal. Mas, então, eu queria só aproveitar para perguntar se você tinha se você lembrar em algum momento, sei lá, de alguma pessoa, tal, que você poderia indicar para um cargo como coordenador de compras, mas, tipo, em âmbito internacional, né?
Tá.
Se você poderia me enviar. Desculpa a forma aí informal de falar isso, a rapidez, mas é que também, eu não sei se agora é o momento, mas no futuro, se você tiver algum contato, eu gostaria de ter conhecimento.
Tá bom. Não, eu vou ficar atento.
Se
Assim,
você precisar de mais detalhes sobre, tipo, a experiência necessária, e me dá um toque aí que eu te passo também essas coisas.
eu acho que é uma boa, Roberto. Eu vi até que você me mandou um e-mail, eu não vi
Sim,
o e-mail, mas provavelmente é sobre esse assunto, né?
Isso, era sobre isso mesmo.
Se você puder, me manda mais detalhe de experiência, enfim, de alguns requisitos, que eu dou uma checada na minha rede de relacionamento aqui. Assim, de bate-pronto.
Legal.
De bate-pronto eu não consigo lembrar de ninguém, mas pode ter gente. Me manda um detalhamento melhor e a gente conversa.
Tranquilo. Não, beleza. Tipo, o processo que tá encerrando, ele levou um tempo, tal, tipo, foram interessadas várias pessoas, mas, assim, sinceramente, eu tenho muitas dúvidas em relação, não a pessoa que estão sendo discutidas agora, mas, tipo, sobre quem está escolhendo, sabe?
Tá.
Porque a gente teve no passado algumas experiências ruins com contratações de, tipo, executivos de alto nível, assim, tal, sabe? Tipo, colocou CEO que não deveria entrar, aí o cara já saiu faz tempo, tal, mas essas coisas. Assim, eu não tenho muita confiança na empresa para escolher bons profissionais, sabe? Então, por isso que eu gostaria de sempre, tipo, se tiver acesso a alguma pessoa bem relacionada, tal, eu acho interessante ter esse contato. Mas eu vou fazer o seguinte, eu vou te mandar, então, tipo, mais ou menos a experiência ali, que é a expectativa, né, desse cargo. Mas se tiver, por exemplo, alguma coisa que você fala, pô, sei lá, acho que desse cargo não sei se tem, mas alguma coisa relacionada à supply chain, de repente algum gestor, seria interessante, entendeu? Visto que a empresa hoje está passando por eu vou até me abrir aqui, a empresa está passando por uma crise de abastecimento. Isso é uma coisa que está acontecendo hoje. Então, seria um desafio para essa pessoa, entendeu? Agora eu acho mais difícil, né? Porque o negócio já está no final, tá? É complicado. Mas talvez no futuro, entendeu? Então, eu vou te mandar ali mais ou menos as expectativas da empresa em relação a esse cargo, mas se você lembrar de algum contato, você, pô, dá uma olhada nesse cara aqui, sei lá, troca uma ideia com ele, esse cara aí, a gente pode pensar mais para frente. Era só isso mesmo.
Não, maravilha, maravilha. Manda para mim e a gente vai se falando.
Valeu, professor. Obrigado pela atenção, hein?
Valeu, Roberto. Abraço. Boa semana.
Tchau, tchau.
Tchau, tchau.
Então, professor, é sobre o Rafael Gutmann, ele te procurou, questão religiosa lá, que ele não poderia vir. E aí, sobre a entrega, eu faria a entrega para ele. Tudo bem se eu fizer pelo meu Dropbox. E aí eu não sei se eu posso entrar na conta dele, se eu entrego pela conta dele, o que é melhor eu fazer, porque aí é meio sério, tipo, entrar na conta de outra pessoa e enviar pela pessoa.
Não, isso não. Mas o Dropbox estava fechado, por isso que ele não mandou, né? Tá
E aí
bom.
ele pediu para enviar.
Faz o seguinte, cara, pede para ele me mandar por e-mail, que eu controlo melhor aqui. Se você mandar 2 arquivos do seu Dropbox, eu não consigo controlar, porque eu pego pelos nomes e tal, entendeu? Eu prefiro pelo e-mail.
E se eu mandar um pelo e-mail e o meu pelo e-class? Porque ele não pode
A semana
acessar o
inteira,
e-mail,
né?
né?
Ele não pode a semana inteira, né?
Eu não sei direito. Ele só falou, cara, me cobre, por favor, porque eu não posso mexer com isso.
Tá. Não, vamos fazer o seguinte, manda pelo Dropbox mesmo, os 2 arquivos, tá? Você consegue mandar? Acho que consegue mandar os 2, né?
Então, não sei, mas vou entregar depois o meu, que o dele tá pronto, faz tempo que o dele tá pronto, porque ele falou assim, ó, vou deixar pronto que eu não vou poder mexer, e aí você
Tá,
só entrega pra mim. E aí
tá,
tem esse problema na entrega.
tá.
Qualquer coisa eu entrego dele, e se não der certo para eu entregar o meu também, eu te mando por e-mail o meu, pode ser?
Pode, mas eu acho que dá os 2, viu, Mário? Eu acho que dá os 2. Tenta mandar os 2 no Dropbox. Aí bota o nome no arquivo bem legível para mim, o seu nome e o
Tá,
nome dele. Se não der para
beleza.
mandar os 2 no Dropbox, aí você manda um por Dropbox e manda o outro por e-mail. Aí fica tudo
Beleza.
certo, tá bom?
Beleza, então, professor, obrigado, viu?
Esse era assunto sensível?
É porque é religião, eu não sei, tipo, falo o nome
Pô,
da
fiquei
pessoa, não sei
preocupado
se...
aqui, cara. Tranquilo, tranquilo,
Tá,
meu.
então,
Beleza.
valeu, professor, um abração, hein?
Abraço, boa
Até.
semana. Tchau, tchau.
Boa semana.